Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us on this new episode of the TCLi podcast. My name is Rafi Yashur. I'm senior partner at the Consulting Lab Incorporated. I'm joined by two very dear colleagues, Skipper, who's our head of design, and Fadi Hindi, who's our founder and CEO. And we're going to be talking about everything to do with consulting and also infused with human beings, what it means to be a human being in the age of AI, consulting, and everything else in between. So welcome and let's begin. Skipper, Fadi, thank you for joining. Since we are a human first firm, I'd like to start with the human side of things. And I think the first question I'd like to ask you both, starting with Fadi, could you give me a concrete experience that has shaped who you are at this very moment? It could be from your childhood, teenage years, university years, whatever you think of, something stands out for you.
Interesting. I mean, I think there's a lot of different examples, right, that you can choose from. So it's just about which period of life where you said, if I'm ever in a leadership position, I am never going to behave like this, or I'm never going to put my people through this, kind of a thing. You almost, in certain instances, I used to write it down. If I ever become a manager, I'm never doing this to the people that work for me. But I think, can you tell me a little bit more about what specifically are you trying to unearth from the human side, so I can pick the right example for you?
So let's take something that you say is very defining of you, a characteristic about you, something that you really hold near and dear to your heart.
Yeah.
And kind of trace back to perhaps either a conclusion you made or an experience that you had that made you feel that that's something you've got to stick to.
Okay. I think that probably from the early years, I even talked about it on like LinkedIn and some podcasts. One of the early managers that I had at Bell Northern Research, his name is John Beta. And he was a great leader because he's one of those people that he was one of those like executives or managers that took care of his people. Even if they made a mistake, he would own up to the mistake immediately. And I don't know if it was John specifically or just others that are similar to John that I've seen in my life, that they would own up to the mistake and they'll defend it, like as if it's like, yeah, what's wrong with you? Of course we did that. And then it was like, then once he's alone with his team, he's like, who's the bonehead that did this? So it's, and it's just, it's a testament to leadership that's saying at all costs, protect your people. You take the fall and you give them all the glory in case of you come into situations where there are problems. You have to protect them, and you have to. Of course, to a certain extent. If it's like they did something horrible or whatever, you cannot protect them. But we're just saying, on average, your teams, they're gonna screw up. They're gonna make mistakes, especially if you are in a corporate setting. So I think that from a human element perspective, when people feel that they are protected, their innovation spirit soars. When they feel like they're going to be penalized for making a small mistake or whatever, they're going to basically say, I'm just going to collect my salary, my paycheck, and I'm just going to work 8 to 5. I don't care. I don't want to get chewed out or spat out or whatever. So to kind of yield over to Skipper here, I would say that something that's very important and defining for my leadership style is that protect your people, give them plenty of room to run, give them all the resources. Don't ask them anything. Don't ask them to do anything you're not willing to do. And it does wonders when people on your team know that you can roll up your sleeves and get into their stuff and you can do it. They're going to apply themselves to give you the best, the best that they can give you. And they know that they're going to be taken care of. So it's just like, watch out, because it's going to be just amazing performance.
I think the thing that came to mind, Rafi, when you asked the question was actually a bit more internal than your example, Fadi. One thing that came to mind for me was, believe it or not, I was actually a very shy child. I didn't speak very much. I wasn't very outgoing in some ways. However, one of the things in my own high school experience was I found speech and debate and theater. So you can track that back to, or track that forward to, in university, I ended up getting part of my major was in playwriting. So you can kind of track it there a little bit. However, I think one of the things that was important for how I approach the world is I came to understand how important it is to express yourself and express yourself clearly. And so the first step being that we all have certain inclinations where we might feel more reserved, or we might feel like we're not qualified, or that we don't know enough to speak on a certain topic. And by no means do I propose misrepresenting that or trying to deceive someone in that way. However, I also think there's something important about sitting in the tension in what you do know and then what you want to know and how to cross that chasm. So that's something that has been important to me, and lots of the paradigms that I follow in my work is uncovering the why, asking leading questions like, so what? What is the impact of this? Really trying to understand where someone else is coming from and why they might be pushing a certain point or an agenda, and then to seek to move from that area of understanding to then getting to a place of action, right? Because that's where things start changing. Because you can talk all you want, you can express opinions, things of that nature, but it's really about how you move from that potential state to that kinetic state that really makes a difference.
Yeah, and to your point, and then I have something about what Fadi said as well. It sounds like what resonates with me about what you said is, for me, one of the things that I've experienced also as a kid is if I don't have it all right, if I don't have it all in my head, then I'm just going to shut up and not say anything. And I think the transformation for me was switching that idea to, no, you can still speak, even if you don't know the whole thing. And what you've got to do to pay respect to truth, which is to say to speak your truth, is to speak in a way that just represents where you are at, where you are at. And to speak to that to the extent that you can, right? And then allowing for whatever is going to come out of that to come out of that. And what happens when you do that is you allow yourself to express your truth to the extent that you're able to express it, without having this perfection in your mind standing in the way of you even attempting to express yourself, which holds a lot of people back actually and makes them appear shy, because they've got that thing in their mind about having it appear perfectly. Fadi, with respect to what you said, I couldn't help but think about something Gary Vaynerchuk said once, as he was being interviewed very quickly by someone, and they asked him, "Give us 5 words that you'd like a CEO to know," and 4 words, and then he gave him 5. I might
extra credit.
I might get the numbers wrong, but he gave him 1 word more.
Sure.
And he said, "They work for you." So as a CEO, often a lot of CEOs think that people work for them. So they got to serve me. And inside of what you said, there's a sense of, no, I work for them, quote unquote. Now, Vaynerchuk takes it a bit further and says, the job of a CEO is to understand who are the people who are working with them, what are the things that motivate them, what are their concerns, what makes them afraid. Are they working for money? Are they working for status? Are they working just to take care of their families? And make sure to give them that so that they don't feel like there's anything taken away from them as they work.
I think that on that point, I believe that, I guess, and this is something that I figured out as I've kind of matured and grew up, I guess, in corporate and just grew up in age, etc. When we're younger, I mean, when I was younger, I had like a big ego and hard-headed and just very combative. I mean, I know I'm still combative.
But only when you were younger.
Only when I was younger.
Right.
Imagine you're getting the watered-down version now. But I think that there was I really cannot. I have to go back and think on when the switch happened, when I realized, holy shit, this is about people. This is not about me. And my whole demeanor changed. The books that I was reading changed. The things that I was always like a big team guy. I like to build teams, but I always wanted to be in the spotlight. I always wanted to, take the glory and do the interview. And over time, that just kind of completely changed. And to the point of what you were talking about, people think CEO, because I've been, praise the Lord, chief operating officer, chief executive officer multiple times, and now as founder and CEO of many different organizations. It's actually a burden. It is not for the enlightened CEO. It is a burden. It is not a blessing or a status. I see it as when somebody asked me, I got asked, I forgot to mention this, I got asked to help lead a firm somewhere around the world recently as a fintech CEO. And I mean, I said yes because the guy said, you're the guy for the job. There's nobody else. I said, I just don't know how I'm going to do it with everything else that I'm doing now. But the thing that dawned on me immediately is just like, oh my God, this is a big responsibility. It's people's, livelihoods. It's, this and that and responsibility. And there's a high probability of failure. All of these things, people think CEO, oh, I'm going to get my own driver, my own suite, my own assistants. And that's really not the case.
Yeah.
If you want to make an impact, I guess.
So, Rafi, can I reflect the question back to you?
Hmm?
I know you're a bit of the de facto host today in the conversation that we're having, but what is a defining experience that shapes how you think about working today?
Yeah. Obviously, I think the answer for all of us, as Fadi experienced when he was trying to answer the question, there's so many things one can talk about, right?
For sure.
But I think one of the big ones for me was this realization that I had sitting in a course. Actually, it's two little realizations that kind of fit together. The meta realization, so to speak, was that up to that point, and I was around 24, 25 years old, that my entire life has been, I saw very clearly in my mind's eye, which is to say not only intellectually, but kind of physically or spiritually, that I lived my entire life up to that point through my feelings and thoughts. There was never a reference outside my feelings and thoughts. Everything was kind of painted over by my feelings and thoughts.
Yeah.
And when I had that thought, I almost tasted what it's like to not be looking at life through my feelings and thoughts. So for a moment, I experienced what it's like to be a complete witness, experiencing life and your feelings and your thoughts. And this separation gave me a sense of how my feelings and thoughts actually limit me in my life and have limited me up to age 24. And obviously a lot of us, most of us, if not all of us, go through challenges in our lives. I've obviously had challenges in my childhood and teenage years that are very particular to me in my life and my family.
Sure.
But they created a lot of conditioning that was negative and tough.
Sure.
And so to break free of that, at least for a moment, so that now you have a conception of what it could be like to step out of your feelings and thoughts, that gave me a tremendous amount of power and creativity in terms of choosing my next action or reaction to a specific thing that's happening with me, whether it's with my parents or at work or anywhere, really, in any relationship.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the meta one that just kind of, how when you're going in a certain direction in your life and you take a bit of a shift, after a year, it takes you a completely different direction than where you would have gone.
Sure.
That's kind of a big one. And kind of attached to that, which allowed me to be, let's say, much more successful than I would have been had I not had that, is this extra realization that I've been playing small in my life. And it's been conditioned and built into me through all sorts of feelings and thoughts that kind of just told me to not do this or that.
Sure.
And that reflected mostly at the time, as 24, there were a few family things that I wanted to get handled. And so I actually left my comfortable job in Toronto, broke off with my girlfriend, sold everything I had, and came back to Middle East, to Dubai, to work with that family situation. And it only happened because I realized that I've been playing small.
I see.
Now that didn't only stick to my family situation, but it was literally my entire life. So my career, my relationship with women, friends, how I showed up in society, in a public space where I was mostly very shy. I would even say very self-conscious, it opened up possibility for me to start taking bigger and bigger roles to break that shell, so to speak, and show up much more authentically to who I know myself to be, rather than what my feelings and thoughts always kind of reflected back to me. I think those are two that just like smacked me in the head and completely took me in a different direction than if I had just stayed.
I mean, it feels like a very small change, but really big implication. Just have that almost like a third person experience to step outside yourself and to see, I think, all of these paths and circuits and whatever the visual piece of it was for you, but to see that and then be able to act on it.
Absolutely. And it gives you such an appreciation. And this is something that us as a team, we haven't talked about this way in those terms. Right. But when we talk about a human, bringing humanity to work, whether it's internally in the company or with clients, what I noticed when I started stepping out of my feelings and thoughts is realizing that every single human being in front of me is dealing with the same thing. Feelings and thoughts, their feelings and thoughts, the conditioned ones, are always penetrating their reality and painting their world in that way. So it gave me an appreciation that when someone doesn't do what I'm expecting them to do, even if I might have told them and showed them how to do it, I always have this, and there's always a limit, as Fadi said, but I always have this thing in my mind where you say, what is it about their feelings and thoughts that prevented them from seeing what I'm talking about, that prevented them from taking the action in the right way? And so I go in an inquiry with them, which obviously takes a bit more patience than one would take in most corporations. People aren't allowed to dig deep into why did this person do that or not. They're like, you did it, you didn't do it.
Right.
Ta-da.
Right.
But it gave me that appreciation to not only be patient with myself as I figure out why I'm not performing in a specific area in my life, whether at work or home, but others. Why are they not kind of doing what they said they would do, the way they said they would do it?
Right.
So yeah, it's an incredibly small change, but it kind of goes to the very being of human beings. We're all walking around with feelings and thoughts, and we're never seeing reality directly, except in those moments where we have a bit of awareness, extra awareness about it.
Right.
Yeah. And I firmly believe that we as TCLi, we are building that kind of culture.
Right.
We're building the kind of culture where we're inquiring into who is every person in this company, what are their strengths, what are their weaknesses, and we're supporting them through that.
Right.
Now, I guess, we don't want to mislead the listeners or the audience. And I guess this is my experience. Unfortunately, the reality is when you're at that C-suite or board level, it's hard, cold facts, man. They do not care about feelings and emotions and people and their kids and their dogs and their mother. They could care less. What's the number? Did you meet it? Did you not meet it? And as a new CEO, it was a very hard pill to swallow because there's a lot of work that I did to enable the team. Okay, that's nice. But at the end of the day, did you meet the number for that quarter? Did you not? Right. And based on, and it was a publicly traded company, so it was more amplified. But it's just something to also think about. So the enlightened leader, and I was saying the CEO, they shield their team from that. They have to be, it's almost like a dual mode that you have to operate in. You have to take care of your people and offer that environment like the one that I was explaining, like John Beta and those people created, and hopefully I started creating for my teams. But at the same time, you have to be ready and snappy with numbers, facts, and figures so that you can answer with hard, cold facts to the board, because that's what's going to enable them to back off and let you run the company. So you just, leaders that are coming up in the ranks have to recognize this, is that you have to, until the world changes, which I doubt it'll ever completely change, you're going to have to operate in those duality of modes where you are human and accessible, but at the same time direct and cold to answering to the machine that just wants to see profits.
I think you're absolutely right. And the balance that I can be struck, although it's sometimes an art and not a science, is that you've got to draw the line, as you say, somewhere. Right. I think you're pointing to two things. Where first, the world is cold. Most of the CEOs are cold. But if someone wants to kind of bring in a bit more enlightenment, as you said, there's still a balance between giving space to be enlightened and then.
And by the way, they're gonna fight you if you're an enlightened leader that takes care of your people.
Right.
Other CEOs don't like it because everybody wants to come work for you, and they're like, why is he so special? He has got a little feather on his cap, on his head or something. Why do you all want to go work for him? And it becomes industry actually starts fighting you because they don't like what you're doing. Like, why don't you have an office? Why don't you have an office and 6 secretaries out in the front like the rest of us?
I want to come to that because as you're speaking, one of the things that came to mind for me is you as someone who's beyond a seasoned professional. You've been in the industry for so long. You've definitely experienced certain frustrations. And I want to kind of go into a few of those that have really not only kicked you in the butt, but made you grow certain things inside of you that you said, no, I'm not going to do this versus, yes, I think this is a good leadership skill. But to go to your point about the balance, I feel like it's very possible to support someone to find out what it is that has them not perform. But at one point, you've got to put a limit to it because you're running a business and time is of the essence. So at one point, you've got to get to a point and say, look, we've tried getting this working with you. We wanted you to perform. I wanted you to perform this way. I don't like to use we because it's like, who's we? No, it's me.
That's right.
I wanted you to perform this way.
You and the mouse in your pocket.
Yeah. That's right. I wasn't able to support you enough to be able to do this. I know you worked really hard on this. And I would want to spend more time to help you, but I really can't because we really need to move forward. So this, you can't hold this role anymore. So we can keep you in a different role, or we'd be happy to consider you for another role in the future,
Right.
So in that way, you can kind of maintain that relationship. You get them to sense that you're human and that you see their humanity, but at the same time, making it very clear for them that they can't keep holding that role because someone needs to be held accountable. It's not a charity.
Yes.
Right.
Let's go to your frustrations. What are some of those that are just really stayed with you to this day? One or two, or whatever comes to mind for you.
Try to find the the most frustrating thing that I've experienced, I guess.
Someone who said something. So you went through an experience over several weeks trying to accomplish something. Someone stood in your way, or you looked up to somebody.
Oh, man, there's a lot of those.
Yeah.
There's too many to count.
Or you looked up to some, because this is, I think, a very important one. When we look up to leaders and then they hurt us in a way where we thought of them in a certain way, but then they act in a way that makes us lose their trust because they worked against our interest, our personal interest, and not interest against the company, but interest whether it's an embarrassment they caused, or they treated us in a way that's just substandard that made us feel slighted in any way. All of those destroy trust, and that could be one of them. It could be other stuff. I'm not sure what comes to mind for you.
I think that in general, the biggest frustrations is doing something that I felt was extraordinary and not being recognized for it, right? That it's downplayed because, and again, honestly, it goes back to taking care of people, because the amount of heavy lifting that is required to be able to set up an environment for people to shine and innovate, it's a lot of hard work, man. And it's a thankless job, right? The people that feel it are your team, because they feel they're bubbling with energy and they're fired up and ready to go. And I think that the problem is that when you go up and try to explain that, why are you slow? Why aren't you meeting the numbers? Why isn't this picking up as much? It takes time.
Right.
It takes time.
It takes time for...
It takes time for for you to be able to build a high-performing team. It cannot be done overnight. I would venture to say that for a team to get its full stride, it might probably take a couple of years. I used to hear those numbers oh man, we could do it in 2 weeks. I think it's not in 2 weeks. If you're dealing with machines and motherboards, it can be done in 2 weeks. But if you're dealing with humans and you want to build kind of an orchestra for a symphony that's actually going to do stuff. You've got a guy that's like the brain for design. You've got a guy that's the brain for strategy or for whatever it is, and you're making them all kind of gel and jive together and start performing. It takes time.
Right.
You cannot do it quickly. Now, the problem is that effort generally is not recognized by corporates globally, America and internationally,
Right.
because we've, actually for TCLi, we're talking about the balanced scorecard. We spent a lot of time looking at our strategy map, right? And we talk about the 4 perspectives and why they're important, why every metric, it feeds into the other metric. And you guys as leaders, you understand how this thing works. You are the exception. I mean, and I can attest to it, right? From being in so many companies, the number of companies that actually have that level of awareness about their strategy is abysmal. It's very disappointing, right? Now, if we take a look at the last 3 months and the amount of time that was being invested on strategy, OKRs, putting the right players in the right spots on the bus, making sure that and there wasn't a lot of focus on the pipeline. If we had a board, that would not fly.
Right.
That would not fly.
Right.
I mean, until this day, and I'm not ashamed to say it, our pipeline is a little fuzzy. We're not really sure what our pipeline is, but because I'm, praise the Lord, I'm able to call the shots. It's okay with me because I know that the pipeline will fall in place eventually. Making sure that we have the right people in the right seats, really gets a higher priority over the business development right now. We are running them in parallel. It's not like we're ignoring it, but it's just that there are more important things that need to be taken care of in order for us to achieve the brand and deliver the value to our customers that we want to deliver and make sure that everybody understands it. So back to your question, the issue is that level of effort is extremely underestimated and unappreciated. But you're still expected as a leader to deliver value and deliver results and everything.
Absolutely. And I've reached a point in my career where if I'm going to be working with someone who's just not patient in that way, or is not willing to understand how much, as you said, work goes into this and is not able to support it, thanks very much. I don't want to work with you. Now, in the corporate world, it's difficult for you because if you get hired as a CEO and you've got a board or you've got people expecting things of you, you've got to comply with whatever timeline they have. But fortunately, we live in a time in the world where we can create our own things. And it's very important for us to choose the people who can support that culture.
And one word to the wise for you CEOs that are watching this, guess what? Boards change.
That's right. They're not forever.
So a 5-year strategy could end up being basically not even a garbage bin. Halfway through, the board changes and they don't like the strategy that you're executing and you start getting blamed for it. And it's like, wait a minute, that's what the previous board gave me. They don't care.
That's right.
Well,
to kind of riff on what you're saying, Fadi, I think there are a couple of different pieces that come to mind for me in thinking about that question. And I think 2 things that float to the top are around this idea of, you talked about looking at frameworks. Balanced scorecard is one that you mentioned. And I think there are things that are really powerful about frameworks, especially those that have been tested and that have improved. However, there's also something about the theater of doing the right framework wrong or doing the wrong framework in this really demonstrative way to say, this is what we're doing and these are the kind of effects that we're getting, and to tap dance across the stage and say in this performative way, right?
Yes.
It's almost like cosplay in a way. Like we're going to cosplay to be a high-performing, profitable business, and we're not. And I think that there are some who might come in, and I'm kind of amalgamating a few different experiences. I won't call out any specific names or places, but I've had at least one manager in my past ask for an inventory of what all the team members were doing, as though that would tell the story of what they were doing and to what impact. And actually, there was one of my managers who was below me that was criticized for having too many one-on-ones with their team. And in this day and age, and especially post-COVID, in this hybrid world that we often don't get to work in person, the idea of having a one-on-one with someone in which you're sharing physical space, I think can be invaluable. Now, if you are doing some activities, including a one-on-one or other kinds of activities, too much, and you're overemphasizing them, you're over-indexing on them in a way that you're not paying attention to the forest, and you're really zeroing in on the trees, then that can be problematic.
Correct.
But I don't know that you can tell that by looking at someone's calendar to say, you're doing too much of this. I think there are many other kind of diagnoses, methods, and ways in which you might be able to discern that information.
100%. And the people who criticize those people who are, let's say, doing one-on-ones, just use that phenomenon as the indication of that person going off in the wrong direction. It's because they don't understand what's the objective and value of this one-on-one.
Right.
They look at it and they consider, what am I doing in this one-on-one, sitting and talking to someone?
Right.
They can't really get what are the questions that are being asked, what kind of conversations are happening, what kind of connection is actually being built with that person.
Right.
But the person who's doing it understands it. And I think what you just said, honestly, kind of summarizes some of the major pitfalls or mistakes that some of the big consulting firms do. And both on the level of the frameworks that you refer to, and then the level of the human connection where you bring in this one-on-one element to it. I think that was very much absent in my experience as a consultant in the consulting world. The second one, definitely.
Right.
And definitely created some friction between me and my leaders, my superiors, when it comes to that. So what you're saying really hits home for me. But about the frameworks, if we want to make it a bit more with regards to the client, frameworks are a way to organize a life experience, right? It's a way to put something in words in order to allow someone to begin to understand what lessons you've learned. But what I've learned about this is that it can be such a huge pitfall. Like, and I recently, I can give a concrete example. I've been reading quite a bit about enterprise architecture because we at TCLi are very big on TOGAF and really approaching any kind of digitalization project in a cohesive manner that allows it to be adopted properly and add value for the entire organization. You can't do that if you're not accounting for all the components that exist in the organization, starting with the business, going to the culture, going to the application level, etc. But the pitfall with EA, enterprise architecture, and TOGAF specifically is if you just focus on fulfilling the TOGAF mandate and you do, let's say, a waterfall way of doing things, which is you have to check every box, you could spend weeks and months and years just documenting a certain area of your business, but not using any of that for value. So it's really a matter of understanding that frameworks have to be held loosely.
For sure.
You learn a framework to learn some of the insights, but then when you're with a client, you've really got to use the senses you have, the taste, the smell, the feeling, the conversation. They have an issue here. There's a problem between those two people. All of that has to be thrown into the mix when implementing stuff for clients. My biggest qualm with consulting firms is they got to a point where they were just cookie cutters. And I don't know if they still are. I presume they still are. But that certainly was my experience.
Yeah. So I wonder if, as we're talking through this, and I think the broad kind of discussion that we're having, it feels like there's a lot of material in here. But I wonder if we might shift a little bit and talk about or think about, because the Consulting Lab isn't just an advisory firm, that there's also an academy offering. So and I'll ask this broadly, are the things that we're talking about, are those inherent in the academy offerings?
I'll say my thoughts about this. Absolutely. And if we pick each one separately, so for me, advisory is an opportunity for TCLi, for us as human beings, to bring that systems thinking or strategic thinking to any client situation. And I'll give just two examples. You both are aware of this. We get into a conversation with a client. We do an hour of a conversation with them, and we get so much value out of them, and they get so much value out of the conversation that they leave saying, I feel like this was therapy for me because it really dug deep into my motivations about all of this. Another conversation I had with a client where they leave and they can have better conversations with their own clients, right? And the only reason we could do that is because we step back and we look at the strategic level, including the human level of the people that we're working with, of the project that they have in mind. So on the advisory side, I believe that that TCLi spirit is infused very well there. On the academy side, we believe that nobody can perform in life if they're not. Nobody can perform up to the level required in life if they're not armed with the right models, armed with the right way of thinking, attitude towards things. And this goes back to our earlier discussion. If I'm living my life through my feelings and thoughts, and my feelings and thoughts are conditioned in the wrong way, that applies also at work. If I'm trying to solve a certain problem for my client and I can only see it or feel it or think of it in a certain way, then my performance as a consultant is going to be not up to par. So in Academy, what we focus on is the thinking and feeling of those professionals. We give them the models that guide the way they see things, but also point out the pitfalls, emotional, mental, that they could fall into in the process of delivering that thing, either for themselves in their personal or their small professional circle, or for their clients if in fact they're consultants. So definitely infused in both of those.
What do you think?
I think that one of the ways in which we talk about the academy, and you said this with your opening question, is that we inhabit a human-centered world, or a human world, right? Yeah. Maybe not centered. But I think that amidst all the chatter of what can frameworks do, what's the newest thinking around how to approach leadership, how to approach strategy, how to approach innovation, tie into that AI, computers, machine learning, all of the things that are floating around right now, I think it is more important to pay attention to the human layer. I was saying to a friend of mine recently that it's all fine and good to talk about AI, and it's all fine and good to talk about other kinds of innovative processes. But the reality is that humans are the ones that provide the revenue for businesses, right? Humans have to buy your services. So if your services, experiences, products, businesses, fill in the blank, if these things do not serve human beings to a point where they are willing to pay for these items, then your business is going to fail, right? The point of running a business is to make money, is to provide some kind of valuable service, experience, or product such that people will want to solve their desire, solve their need, solve their pain point, meet their goal, that they will basically trade that function for money. If people don't want to do that, then you're going to fail. And I don't care if you're a nonprofit, right? Because even a nonprofit's goal is to make money. They have a different tax designation than a business does, or a for-profit business. However, their goal is still to make money. So I do think it's important to approach it with the lens of being human-centric, being curious. How do we unlock some of these things? Because I think too many times we, and I might be referring to the people sitting at this table, but speaking more broadly, we, me and the mouse in my pocket, or me and my team, or whoever, we need to get over ourselves in order to keep moving in some direction, right? And it's not a linear process.
Over ourselves in what respect?
Over ourselves
in what part of ourselves we have to get over?
Yeah, so I think feeling like we're not enough, feeling like we're not ready, feeling like we don't understand the whole of the problem. I think that those are the frictions and the stumbling blocks that we encounter in the work that we do.
Very, very interesting. You just added an extra layer that I wasn't considering. Perhaps it's important to explore it. I just want to go to the earlier layer, which...
But Fadi, you're not getting out of answering the question, by the way. Just in case that's what you're trying to do.
Try to just enjoy the show, man.
I think with the advent of AI and how it's getting infused into our entire professional lives and personal lives. What, and I can't remember who said this, but what's becoming so important for clients is authenticity. So now that AI can do all the grunt work, or a lot of the grunt work, not all the grunt work, people are even more allergic to hackneyed and cliched kind of cookie cutter responses, proposals, or conversations.
Performance, the theater.
Exactly. And they're so sensitive to it.
Yep.
That they'll have a conversation with you, and if they feel you're like that, they're going to be nice to you, but they're not going to come back.
Right.
And I think that's what defines this team here, is that when we get into these conversations, we try extra hard to get out of our own scripts and to approach this in an incredibly authentic way. So I think that authenticity is what gets human beings to buy.
Right.
When they know that you're a human being listening to them, rather than someone who's like, oh, okay, I got you. You need X,
right,
or you need Y. No. Let me really get into it. I'm going to stop here because that other piece tripped me up a bit. Yeah.
Well, I think right now would be a good moment to actually spell out a little bit about what the consulting lab, the advisory arm, as well as the academy. There are 3 areas that are spelled out for the kind of work that we do. Would you say a little bit more about that?
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, to talk a little bit about, you were asking about, and both of you are talking about advisory and academy and kind of the difference. Honestly, we're on a process of discovery. I mean, TCLi is an experiment. It's my 5th startup, and I've been fortunate to have colleagues and friends that are coming along on this journey and investing in their time and their energy and trying to make it as big as we can make it. But based on a lot of the consulting, corporate, and startup lessons that I've learned, you guys have heard me say this, like, we'll let the market decide. Right? So the vision was, we are going to go out and do advisory in a unique way that is, I mean, at least for the McKinseys and the Bains and those guys, it always starts with an assessment. And for some reason, it's the same for us. It's always starting with an assessment. Hate it or love it. It is what it is. Because interestingly, a lot of the clients we're working with don't know where they stand, which is just like mind-boggling sometimes, right? They've got good documentation. It's probably not their craft, so no fault or blame or anything, but it's just they cannot articulate where are they right now and where do they need to go. So an assessment seems to be kind of a defining document, or almost think about an assessment as like a baseline of where they are today. What are their aspirations? So
Can I offer an analogy that I've heard in the last month or so? And whether this is in regards to a team or an entire company, or maybe just a few individuals, I think we all inhabit these spaces. And just for the purposes of illustration, think of it as a jar. And this jar has a label. And when you're inside the jar, when you're inside the company, when you're inside the team, you can't see what's written on the outside of the jar, right? So it almost takes someone picking up the jar and looking at it, maybe getting into the jar with the people that are in there, and also then looking to see what's written on the label on the outside of the jar to understand, because they don't have all of the rituals and rhythms of what's happening on the team. So you almost need someone to come in from an outside perspective to be able to observe what's happening inside the jar, see what's written on the label, and to then see if those things pair up. And then how then does the collection move towards what their aspiration and goals are? So I wonder if there's something in there, Fadi, to what you're saying.
We're kind of, I guess, peeling the onion on a lot of different topics, which is good. I mean, I think this is the purpose of these conversations. What's interesting, I mean, building high-performing teams has been a thing, right? Something that I really have worked hard to become good at and understand, and so on and so forth. And why would you, I mean, so now we're going to peel the onion. So why would you have a jar, or why would you have something written on it? Or why would there be people in it, or people doing, just in general, what's going on, right? So at the end of the day, and you said something that was like beautiful, meaning that, because it's so true, a business exists to make money. And if there's confusion about that, this is not kindergarten, this is not middle school. We're not here. I mean, we want to be friends. So we want to separate the outcome from the means to the outcome.
That's
right? The outcome, if anybody's confused, if you're confused about why you exist as a business, it is to make money.
Right.
And if you're confused about that, there you have some serious problems.
Right.
You have some serious problems. You know, this is not a neighborhood gathering or a tea club or whatever. You're in this for a particular purpose. And albeit, I sound hard and cold because, I don't know, man, I had my butt handed to me so many times. It is the truth. Because if you lose sight of that, you're going to run out of money and you're going to go bust pretty quick, right? So with that being said, enlightened leadership to come and say, all right, the means and the vehicle by which we're going to make money is going to be empowering and inspirational. It's not going to be dark and we're going to, mushroom therapy. Have you heard about mushroom therapy?
No. Yeah, so
You cover them with manure and you keep them in the dark.
Oh, wow. Oh, okay.
That's mushroom therapy.
I see. Really?
Yeah. So if you have a lot of the corporates work this way. You cover them with manure and you keep them in the dark. Don't let them ask questions.
I'll keep going.
You handle all the details, or like the way that you want things to go. You just tell this person what to do, and you tell that person what to do, and you tell that person what to do. And you are in the middle of you're the clearinghouse and the broker for everything. Nobody should ever come up with an idea that's not your idea. That's bullshit. We're not going to accept that.
I thought you were literally talking about burying them.
I went the mushroom way as well, the actual mushrooms. But I think part of what you're getting at is there are many other people who've said this, but I think of the way that Simon Sinek talks about this, where you don't manage yourself out of a problem.
Correct.
Right? You lead out of a problem.
That's right.
Or a situation, or like you want to be led, not managed.
Yeah.
So maybe the manure dark
I think
is a little bit like managing.
Management.
peeling the onion back. It's about what is your, like, as a human being, you're working in a job or in an organization. Is it a job or is it a calling?
Right.
Is the difference.
Right.
A job, you're going to go clock in and clock out, and you're going to make sure that you're going to get paid and that you're going to maybe get the increments along the way so that you can put better food on the table over time. But you could care less if the organization succeeds or doesn't or fails. If you don't care, you just go look for another job. There's nothing wrong with that. So a lot of people are built. I'm not built for that. I'm not built that way. I'm built for just shooting for the stars, very fast, right? In the fastest shuttle possible, right? Whether it's a boat or a car or a rocket or anything, right? But the idea is that I want to, like, I've decided at one point that I want to work for a cause, not for, I mean, the money is important. As I said, I've got responsibilities. We all do. We have to put food on the table. So I got to make sure that I'm getting compensated. But at the same time, I want to be inspired. People love to work for others that inspire them. They shut down when they're being told what to do, or if they're being rebuked if they did something bad, even if it's an honest mistake. If they come down on like a ton of bricks, and say, "Oh, I'm not doing that again, man.
Right.
I am not going out of my way. They can fly, take a hike. I don't care."
And it's definitely a challenge because every human being is born in a unique way. Each one of us has their own unique set of skills. And then you come in a society that it's got its own values. And then you get into a company that has its own values. So you've got to really be very selective about all aspects of where you work, because otherwise it's not a calling anymore. As you said, I'm here just to get one little piece of value for me, monetary usually, and then to hell with the rest.
And to go back, so that I'm not evading the question, to go back to Skipper's point. So when you're looking, I like the jar analogy. I think it's kind of cool. When you're looking at that jar, let's make sure that we understand that somewhere on that label says "make money" or spend budget wisely, whatever it is, right? It's something that's associated with a financial metric, right? So that once that is clear, then it's about, all right, how do we set up the environment and the vehicle by which we're going to get there, there's two ways to do it. You can cover them with manure and keep them in the dark.
Sure.
And by the way, fine. I mean, I'm not going to judge. If that's how you want to run it, so be it. Me as a person, I'd prefer to run with other inspired people. I want to be inspired, and I want to inspire, because I just think that that's how we grow. At least for me, I always want to stretch the limits. Sometimes it's stretched a little too thin, but there's nothing wrong with that. I think that being able to grow mentally, physically, and have the right mental health from a business standpoint is about to be challenged beyond your limits.
Right.
And I'm not going to get challenged beyond my limits if I'm afraid that Skipper is going to outshine me. I'm like, Skip, go for it, man. Go as fast as you can, and go rise as much as you can. I'll support, because he's going to make me get better. Right. If I am being challenged by somebody intelligent and capable with skills, I'm going to start running because I need to grow to match his speed, versus I'm going to pummel him to the floor to make sure that he doesn't rise. Right. So that way I can always stay, the top dog kind of a thing. So these are the two different ways by which you can define how this jar is going to buzz on the inside. Right. To deliver what's on the label on the outside. Right. So, and then again, we can dig into any of those that you're interested in digging into. Yeah. But to me, and then I'm gonna roll back, because I haven't forgotten. I'm gonna roll back. So the advisory starts with the assessment of what's going on in this jar, what's on the label, what's going on inside, what are the relationships with some of the people even inside, and where do they need to go. And by the way, if they're confused about where they need to go, we'll go find the right benefactor that will tell us, these guys should make money. They should make this much money by this day. They should cut costs by this much by this day. And we'll define it for them. So we'll take that jar and we'll refine the label in our assessment. And then our implementation, our team, and we have relationships with several organizations with strategic partnerships to be able to scale up to 100 or 200 people, 300 people if we want to. Not that we're going to scale up, not that we've been on a project that needed 300 people, but we can scale as big as we want, and our partners will run these projects. But the vision that we started with is that that's not enough. That's not enough, because what happens if you do the assessment and then you leave, customers are left, and we don't like those a lot. We'd rather do the implementation, because there's a lot that goes on in the translation from the assessment to the implementation. And I'm sorry, they're not going to have 300 years of professional experience that TCLi has that we can bring to the table. That translation is what's going to make or break. The slide deck is nice and slick and cool, and it talks about your story and makes you look like you know what you're doing. But if you don't know how to translate it, who's going to do the data architecture? Who's going to do the application architecture? How are you going to convert some of these objectives and KPIs into a CRM system or into your website? And how are you going to link your inbound marketing? And what type of design are you going to have? And what type of experience? Who are the customers? Like, all of these things are going to come in the implementation. So if the customer decides to, we go with the customer for the implementation or not. In both cases, we say, please join the academy. It is a drop in the bucket for the cost, the subscription cost, and they will have access to like all these experts. We have about 15, 16 faculty members that each have 15, 20, 30 years of experience. They can ask questions, they can take their courses, etc. But with MVP2, and thank you, Skipper, for all the hard work you and Dima have done on MVP2, it's community-led. Right. So yesterday I was answering a question about automation. Yep. Somebody wanted to know about automation. She was able to log into our platform, log into the academy, and go under general discussion and say, let's talk about automation, because I'm not getting an answer. And here's my question. And then I think I wrote like a pretty long thing to explain to her, at least to guide her on how to think about automation. Well, I think that's pretty unique, because now customers, clients, knowledge seekers have an opportunity to come in and ask experts to say, how do I go about this? And take classes for the track that they're in. If they're in the enterprise track or in the startup track, and we created like a Sri Lanka, Maldives track, I think, for the Asia, like that part of the Asia Pacific. So that content is curated for that group, and they can engage in that curation, the curated content for enterprise versus startup versus whatever, or in the general discussion with everybody else. So everybody on the platform can hack away at it and debate topics until they're blue in the face. And I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to those like intellectual, battle, like Mortal Kombats about this is the way to do it. No, this is not the way to do it. Because I think those are to me, that's the success. That's when we're going to say, now the Academy is successful, because those are going to unearth the best answers.
Right.
The best answers.
Go back, Rafi, to something that you were saying about these strong opinions strongly held. I think that one of the benefits of having a discussion forum, a place where people can come in and contribute their points of view, challenge points of view, it goes more towards this idea of having strong opinions, which I think are important. I think you should firm up, have these hypotheses. These are the things that we're going to move forward with, but also that they be loosely held. So instead of the idea of this is exactly the way it has to be done, this is the way that I've seen it done before, understanding that just because it's been done this way before in another environment for another client on another team, maybe you read a book that, detailed out an example, that sometimes it's also about, well, I have this idea, I think this is how it will work, and let's move forward with it, but I also want to welcome not only the data feedback that you might get from customers, maybe it's from stakeholders, maybe it's from other folks, but you have to know when to budge from your position.
Yeah.
Right?
And you're talking about the people who are part of the Academy members? Are you referring to them?
Yeah, I would
Mostly,
say the
right?
Academy members, and then of course, whatever work it is that they encounter,
Exactly.
that this idea of, well, I have this, the question that came up around automation,
Yeah.
like here are some of the things that I know. You added to that in a yes and approach, but then also the way in which, so as of right now, there's an enterprise and startup track. We might be using a slightly different word, but that's the way that I think of it. But then also how this aligns to the larger focus areas around people and culture.
Right. Because that's something that you had mentioned that it's important to outline. I want to finish one thought that we started with, and then I'm going to come to the communities of practice. So to make sure that I'm answering the question, the vision of TCLi Advisory and Academy was to be a duo. I like that. That's a good label.
Write that down.
Yeah, write that down. To be a duo that helps transform an organization and give it the education that it needs to make it sustainable.
That's right.
And beyond the implementation, or during the implementation and beyond the implementation. Because when we looked at traditional consulting, people always felt like they were left holding the bag after the consultant left.
Sure.
And we're saying, guess what? We're going to give you now an opportunity for you to actually be able to stay connected and be able to get help. And probably from a lot of the same people that delivered the assessment and the implementation.
That's right.
So that you have a lifeline ongoing and coaching that doesn't end.
Right.
So I think, the ethos for TCLi Academy and Advisory or Advisory and Academy is that this is the future of work. Right. This is the future of consulting. It is a relationship that starts when we begin your assessment, and it's going to continue for years to come. Okay. And we don't want to charge you through the nose for it like regular consulting rates. We're actually creating new channels for you to engage with people. So I think I've answered the question about that. And to finish the thought about what I learned from other startups, is we're letting the customer define what they want. Right. So we're rolling out these, like Ryan and me as my co-founder, when we started this in January of 2025, the first thing that I did was to say, I'm not going to incorporate. I'm just going to go see if somebody will buy the service in the first place. And we had somebody that picked it up and actually liked it.
Sure.
And they started wanting more and more and more. And before we knew it, we were like, 2 or 3. Don't worry, IRS. I didn't collect any fees for that. They were pro bono. We had 2 or 3 clients, and we had no company incorporated.
Right.
And it was like, holy shit, we should probably go incorporate just to protect ourselves. So we incorporated after we validated that there was appetite for these services. And then as we started going in, I'm like, hey, we should do this whole education. You and I have talked about this over the past three or 4 years. And we said, why don't we bring in this, if we want to disrupt consulting, why don't we bring in this education component? Let's just make it fun. Let's have people not only trust us and say, these were the best guys I've ever worked with. I actually want to become friends with them on an ongoing basis and learn from them as I go through my transformation. And the academy got kicked off. And we said, all right, let's launch MVP 1. And Skipper was a part of our journey for MVP 1. He wasn't with TCLi at the time. And we launched MVP 1 against the screams of many people when we converted on July 4th. We ended up with 50, 60 people on the platform.
That's right.
And we learned from that. Same thing, market. What do you like? What do you dislike? What do we want? There were additional vision ideas that were coming that we wanted to validate, feedback we got from customers. And now this weekend, we just launched the MVP 2. Yeah. So I'll stop here and then just kind of turn it back to you guys to see where you want to, just one last thing. So there's, with the advisory and academy, they're supported or they're kind of structured as 3 communities of practice: innovation and strategy, structure and scale, and people and culture. Now, these internally, we are structured in different practice areas that the market doesn't need to worry about. Because when we deliver to the market, we're delivering across these 3 communities of practice. Right. But Skipper leads design, I lead strategy, Dima leads people, Ryan leads operations. It's different logistics. It's different practices. The market doesn't care where the expertise is coming from, and we've structured ourselves in this fabric or matrix to where we can pull the expertise where needed, and it will be delivered through these 3 communities of practice.
Yeah. Well, I think there's also a little bit of overlap in the way that you've used this analogy before, this fabric coming together. But I also think about this in another way of many people know the notion of a symphony or an orchestra. And in either of those 2 arrangements, there are multiple instruments that are present. Multiple people who play violin, multiple people who play viola, cello, the brass, all of the different instruments.
That's cool.
And some people might say that the viola sounds a lot like a violin. So why do you need both? Well, the reality is that it fills out the sound. So whether it's a simple one piece, a solo bass playing a composition, or maybe it's a small team of 3 to 5 instruments playing a particular piece, or it's a full symphonic orchestra, then you bring in the right component parts to play the song that needs to be played
for that specific audience.
That's right.
Clients.
That's right. Right. So, to the listening and or watching audience, we appreciate you joining in for the conversation with myself, with Rafi, with Fadi. We don't have a title yet for the podcast for the Consulting Lab. However, I expect
we're experimenting. Make sure you like and subscribe so that we'll come up with a name.
That's right.
Market experimentation.
That's right. But I think suffice it to say that we plan on doing more of these types of conversations to find out what people are aligning to, what people are gravitating towards, and also ways in which we can tell the story of the Consulting Lab, both the advisory and the academy. Because the ultimate purpose is to bring that human lens to the kind of work that we do, which I think in some avenues is severely lacking.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you both. This was a great conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.